Commander Kim Tae adjusted his uniform as he walked through the gleaming corridors of Harmony Station. The massive space station floated silently in the void around Kepler 442b, its rotating sections creating artificial gravity for the countless species that called it home. Today felt different, though. Today, humanity would either prove itself or become the laughingstock of the galaxy. The crystalline walls hummed with energy as Kim Tae approached the main negotiation chamber. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see the swirling storms of the gas giant below, painted in shades of purple and gold. Somewhere in those clouds lay the disputed territories that had sparked a war lasting 300 years. "Commander, the delegates are arriving," announced Lee Sun, his young translator, her voice tight with nervousness. At 26, she was the youngest person ever assigned to a galactic peace mission. Her black hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her dark eyes reflected the dancing lights of the approaching ships. Kim Tae nodded and watched through the observation deck as the alien vessels approached. The Vorthak ship looked like a floating crystal cathedral, its transparent surfaces catching and refracting the light from Kepler 442's twin suns. Geometric patterns pulsed along its hull in brilliant blues and whites, creating a mesmerizing light show that hurt human eyes to look at directly. On the opposite side came the Nalari vessel, which barely looked like a ship at all. It appeared more like a contained lightning storm, crackling energy held together by invisible force fields. Bolts of electricity danced across its surface in patterns that seemed almost alive, shifting from deep reds to bright yellows in rapid succession. "They really don't like each other," Lee Sun murmured, watching as both ships maintained maximum distance from one another. 3 centuries of war tends to do that," Kim Tae replied. He had studied the conflict files for months. The Vorthak, beings made of living crystal, claimed the gas giant's upper atmosphere as their sacred breeding ground. The Nalari pure energy creatures insisted the electromagnetic storms were their ancestral feeding grounds. Neither side had been willing to compromise. The station's AI announced the arrivals in its calm, mechanical voice. Vorthak delegation. Docking at Bay 7, Nalari delegation securing at Bay 12. All personnel maintain safe distances during disembarkation. Kim Tae and Lee Sun made their way to the central negotiation chamber, a vast spherical room designed to accommodate species of all shapes and sizes. The walls could adjust their opacity and temperature, while the atmosphere could be modified in different sections to suit various biological needs. The Vorthak delegate entered first, and Kim Tae had to suppress his amazement. The being stood, nearly 3 meters tall, its body composed of what looked like living diamond. Light passed through its crystalline form, creating rainbow patterns that shifted with every movement. When it spoke, the words came as pulses of colored light that danced across its surface. "We are High Crystallarch Vorth Mantis of the Eternal Facets," the being announced, though Lee Sun had to whisper the translation as the light patterns meant nothing to most species. The Nalari delegate arrived moments later, and the temperature in the room immediately rose several degrees. The creature was pure energy contained within a roughly humanoid outline, constantly shifting between different electromagnetic frequencies. When it communicated, the station's lights flickered and electronic devices hummed with interference. "Fiam Storm Speaker Nilakthos of the Infinite Current," it declared, its voice coming through the station's communication system as translated electromagnetic pulses. Kim Tae stepped forward, feeling incredibly small between these 2 cosmic beings. "Welcome to Harmony Station. I am Commander Kim Tae of Earth's Diplomatic Corps. We appreciate your willingness to pursue peace." Both aliens turned toward him, and he could feel their disdain like a physical weight. The Vorthak's light patterns shifted to what Lee Sun quietly identified as the equivalent of dismissive laughter. "The Council sends children to mediate our ancient conflict." High Crystallarch Vorth Mantis pulsed in rapid blue and white flashes. Storm Speaker Nelakthos crackled with what sounded like electronic scoffing. "Primitive, carbon-based life forms? Think they can understand matters beyond their comprehension." Lee Sun watched the exchange with growing fascination. Something was happening that neither alien realized. As the Vorthak spoke in light, and the Nalari responded in electromagnetic pulses, She found herself understanding both simultaneously. Her human brain was processing the light frequencies as visual patterns while simultaneously interpreting the electromagnetic signals as auditory information. "Commander," she whispered urgently, "I think I know why the Council chose us." Kim Tae glanced at her questioningly, but she was already studying the alien communications with intense focus. While other species in the galaxy had evolved to understand either light-based or energy-based communication, humans had developed brains capable of processing multiple sensory inputs simultaneously. They were natural interpreters. The realization hit both humans at the same moment. They weren't here because they were expendable. They were here because they were the only species in the galaxy that could truly understand both sides of this ancient conflict. Dr. Park Jin floated in the zero-gravity archive section of Harmony Station, surrounded by holographic displays showing 3 centuries of war records. Her fingers danced through the floating data streams, pulling up battle reports, territorial claims, and historical documents from both the Vorthak and Nilari civilizations. Something wasn't adding up. "Computer, show me the original territorial dispute records from 2722, she commanded, her voice echoing in the quiet chamber. The hologram shifted, displaying a 3-dimensional map of Kepler 442b's upper atmosphere. 2 distinct zones were highlighted, one pulsing with crystalline blue light, the other crackling with electromagnetic energy. But as Park Jin rotated the display, she noticed something peculiar. The zones weren't separate at all. They overlapped, in a perfect spiral pattern, around the planet's magnetic field lines. "Interesting," she murmured, zooming in on the overlap zones. Her heart began racing as she realized what she was looking at. "Computer, translate these Vorthak religious texts and cross-reference with Nilari spiritual practices." Meanwhile, in the Cultural Analysis Lab 3 levels below, Choibo was having his own moment of discovery. Surrounded by floating screens displaying alien artwork, religious symbols and ceremonial recordings, he had been working for 72 hours straight. His dark hair was messy, and his eyes were red from staring at the displays. But he couldn't. "Stop now. This can't be right," he whispered, staring at 2 images side by side. On the left was a Vorthak crystal formation showing their creation myth, geometric patterns representing the birth of their species from cosmic light. On the right was a Nilari energy sculpture depicting their origin story, swirling electromagnetic patterns showing their emergence from stellar storms. The patterns were identical. Choibo's hands trembled as he overlaid the 2 images. The match was perfect, just expressed in different mediums. One species saw the cosmic phenomenon as light, the other as energy, but they were worshipping the same thing. Back in the archives, Park Jin had made an even more startling discovery. The original territorial claim documents told a very different story than the war propaganda both sides had been spreading. According to the ancient records, neither species had claimed exclusive rights to the sacred zones. They had been sharing them for millennia. "Computer, when did the first armed conflict begin?" she asked. "Armed conflict commenced following the Great Silence of 2722, the AI responded. "All communication between species ceased 3 days before the first battle." Park Jin's eyes widened. "Show me what happened during the Great Silence." The holographic display shifted to show communication logs. For thousands of years, both species had maintained regular contact, sharing the sacred spaces in a complex but peaceful rotation. Then suddenly all communication stopped. 3 days later, Vorthak crystal ships and Nilari energy vessels were firing on each other above the gas giant's storms. "Computer, analyze the cause of communication failure." Analysis indicates massive solar flare activity from Kepler 442's primary star during specified period. Electromagnetic interference disrupted all interspecies communication for 72 hours. Park Jin felt her heart sink. 300 years of war, millions of lives lost on both sides, all because of a 3-day communication blackout caused by solar flares. During those crucial hours, fear and misunderstanding had replaced centuries of cooperation. She activated her communicator. "Choibo, get to the main conference room now. Bring your cultural analysis data." 20 minutes later, both humans burst into the negotiation chamber, where Commander Kim Tae was attempting to moderate another heated exchange between the alien delegates. The Vorthak High Crystal Arc was pulsing angry red patterns, while the Nelari Storm Speaker was crackling with irritated yellow energy. "Commander, we need to show them something," Park Jin announced, her voice cutting through the alien arguments. Kim Tae looked relieved at the interruption. "Whatever you have, Dr. Park, now would be good." Park Jin activated the room's central holographic projector. The image of Kepler 442b appeared, showing the overlapping sacred zones. "High Crystal Arc, Storm Speaker, what you're fighting over isn't two separate territories. It's one shared sacred space that you've been peacefully sharing for thousands of years." Both aliens turned their attention to the display, their aggressive postures shifting to confusion. Choi Bo stepped forward with his own projector. "More importantly, your creation myths are identical. You're both worshipping the same cosmic phenomenon, the quantum resonance field that connects all energy and matter in this system." The Vorthak's crystal form began shifting through different colors rapidly, while the Nilari's energy field fluctuated between frequencies. Both were displaying what humans had learned were signs of deep shock. "Impossible," the High Crystal Arc pulsed in sharp white light. "The energy parasites have no understanding of the sacred geometry." "Absurd," crackled the Storm Speaker. "The crystal fanatics cannot comprehend the true current." Park Jin smiled sadly. "You're both right, and you're both wrong. You understand different aspects of the same truth. The Vorthak see the geometric patterns that energy creates when it crystallizes into matter. The Nilari experience the pure energy that flows through those patterns. You're like two people looking at the same mountain from different sides, each insisting their view is the only real one." She manipulated the hologram to show the quantum field interactions around Kepler 442b. "Your sacred spaces aren't separate, because they can't be separate. They're two parts of the same cosmic dance. The crystal formations focus and shape the energy flows, while the energy currents provide the power that maintains the crystal structures." The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the station's life support systems. Both alien delegates stared at the display, processing this revelation that challenged 3 centuries of hatred and war. The first explosion rocked Harmony Station like a massive bell, sending vibrations through every corridor and chamber. Security. Chief Kang Do was reviewing patrol schedules in his office when the emergency alarms began screaming. Red lights bathed the station in an ominous glow as his communication device crackled to life. "All security teams to battle stations. We have multiple hostile contacts approaching the station." "This is not a drill," announced the station's AI in its eerily calm voice. Kang Do grabbed his tactical gear and sprinted toward the command center. Through the station's massive viewing ports, he could see them, sleek black ships with crystalline edges cutting through space like deadly shards. These weren't the ceremonial vessels of the official Vorthak delegation. These were warships belonging to the Crystal Purists, a radical faction that viewed any peace with the Nilari as betrayal. On the opposite side of the station, crimson energy bolts streaked through the darkness. The Eternal Storm faction had arrived, as well, their ships looking like contained supernovas ready to explode. Both radical groups had somehow coordinated their attack, united only in their desire to destroy the peace talks. "Kang Do to all security teams," he barked into his communicator. "While running, we have hostile forces from both sides. Protect the delegates at all costs. Remember, we maintain neutrality even in combat." Lieutenant Yoon Ha was already in the main negotiation chamber when the attack began. The young security officer had been assigned to discreet protection duty, watching over the peace talks from the shadows. Now she found herself standing between 2 alien delegates and certain death. "High Crystal Arc Storm Speaker, we need to move you to the secure sections immediately," she announced, her hand moving to her weapon as another explosion shook the station. The Vorthak delegate's crystal form flickered with indignation. "We do not flee from heretics and rebels." The Nilari Storm Speaker crackled with similar pride. "The Eternal Storm thinks they can silence us with violence. They are mistaken." Yoon Ha gritted her teeth. Even facing death, these beings were too proud to accept help from humans they considered inferior. With respect, your deaths won't help anyone achieve peace. My job is to keep you alive. The station's defensive systems activated, launching interceptor drones from hidden bays throughout the structure. The small robotic fighters spread out in formation, their blue engine trails creating geometric patterns against the star field. But they were vastly outnumbered by the attacking forces. In the command center, Kang Do coordinated the defense while watching the tactical display. 47 enemy ships surrounded the station, with more arriving every minute. His security team consisted of only 12 humans and a handful of maintenance robots. "Sir, the Crystal Purist ships are targeting the Nalari delegation quarters," reported Sergeant Bei Min from the weapons control station. "And the Eternal Storm vessels are aiming for the Vorthak residential section." "They're not just trying to stop the peace talks," Kang Do realized with horror. "They want to massacre the other side's delegates and blame us for failing to protect them." A massive crystal projectile slammed into the station's hull near the Nalari quarters, tearing through 3 decks and venting atmosphere into space. Emergency bulkheads sealed the breach, but Kang Do could see on his monitors that Nalari delegation members were trapped in a section that was losing power. "Yun Ha, we have Nalari delegates trapped in section C7. The Crystal Purists are moving in for the kill." Yun Ha looked at the Vorthak High Crystallarch, who was still refusing to leave the negotiation chamber. "I have to save them," she said simply. The crystal being's light patterns shifted to what humans had learned indicated surprise. "You would abandon your duty to us to save our enemies." "They're not enemies," Yun Ha replied, checking her weapons charge. "They're people who need help." She sprinted through the station's corridors as more explosions rocked the structure. Emergency lighting cast weird shadows on the walls, and she could hear the distant sound of energy weapons firing. The station's defensive systems were failing. When she reached section C7, she found 3 Nalari delegates huddled in a damaged compartment. Their energy forms were flickering weakly, barely maintaining cohesion in the failing life support system. Through the breach in the hull, she could see Crystal Purist fighters approaching, their weapons charging for a final strike. "This way," she shouted, gesturing toward an emergency evacuation route. But the Nalari were too weak to move quickly in their energy forms. Without hesitation, Yun Ha activated her suit's magnetic field generators, creating a containment field that could safely carry the energy beings. The process was dangerous. One wrong move and the electromagnetic feedback could kill both her and the aliens she was trying to save. She carried all 3 Nalari delegates through the evacuation tunnel just as Crystal Purist boarding pods crashed through the section's outer wall. The radical aliens found only empty, damaged compartments. Meanwhile, Kang Do faced a similar situation in the Vorthak residential area. Eternal storm energy weapons had overloaded the power grid, threatening to shatter the crystal being's protective environment. Without proper resonance fields, the Vorthak would literally fall apart at the molecular level. "All available personnel to Vorthak quarters," he commanded. "We need to restore power to their environmental systems." His team worked frantically to reroute power while Eternal Storm fighters strafed the station's hull. Sparks flew from damaged control panels as humans risked electrocution to save beings who had called them primitive just hours before. Engineer Kim Soo crawled through a damaged power conduit filled with live electrical cables, suffering severe burns to restore the Vorthak environmental systems. Medic Lim Hai ran through sections exposed to hard vacuum to reach injured crystal beings, her suit's life support failing as she carried them to safety. The battle raged for 6 hours. When it finally ended, 12 human security personnel had been wounded, 3 critically, but every single alien delegate from both sides had survived. 3 days after the attack, the negotiation chamber felt different. The air recycling. Systems hummed quietly as they worked to clear the lingering smell of smoke and ozone. Emergency repair crews had patched the hull breaches, but scorch marks on the walls served as reminders of how close they had all come to death. Dr. Song Mi entered the chamber, carrying a portable holographic projector and several data tablets. The cultural historian had spent the past 72 hours without sleep, preparing something she hoped would change everything. Her usually neat appearance was disheveled, her black hair pulled back in a messy bun, but her eyes burned with determination. The Vorthak High Crystal Arc sat motionless in the chamber's center, its crystal form displaying slow, thoughtful patterns of deep blue and purple light. Across from it, the Nilari storm speaker flickered with low-frequency energy, the equivalent of quiet contemplation among its species. Both aliens had been asking the same question since the attack ended. Why had the humans risked their lives to save them? High Crystal Arc storm speaker, Songmi began, activating her projector. You've both asked why we protected you during the attack. The answer lies in something you need to understand about humanity. A three-dimensional map of Earth appeared in the chamber's center, showing the planet as it existed centuries ago. Different regions were highlighted in various colors, representing the hundreds of nations that had once existed. This is our homeworld 500 years ago, Songmi explained. What you're seeing are the territories of over 200 different human nations. Many of them had been at war for generations, some for thousands of years. The Vorthak's light patterns shifted to curious yellow-green hues. Your species was divided against itself. Constantly, Songmi replied with a sad smile. We fought over resources, territory, religious beliefs, and sometimes just because our ancestors had fought. Some conflicts lasted so long that nobody remembered how they started. She manipulated the hologram to show specific regions. These two nations fought each other for over 700 years. Their people couldn't even speak to each other without violence breaking out. Sound familiar? The Nilari storm speaker crackled with what humans had learned to recognize as embarrassment. Your species resembled ours. More than you know, Songmi continued. She changed the display to show Earth in the present day. The hundreds of different colored territories had been replaced by a unified blue glow. This is Earth today. One world, one people working together. The alien stared at the transformation in stunned silence. How? Whispered the High Crystal Arc, its crystal form pulsing with amazement. Songmi smiled and pulled up her first case study. Let me show you. This is the story of two human nations that hated each other for over a century. They fought 3 major wars, each more devastating than the last. Millions died. Their people were taught from childhood that the other side was evil. The hologram showed historical footage of the devastating conflicts, cities reduced to rubble, families torn apart by war. Both alien delegates watched with growing horror at the scale of human-on-human violence. Then something happened, Songmi continued. A natural disaster struck both nations simultaneously. A massive earthquake that didn't care about borders or politics. And do you know what happened next? She showed images of rescue teams crossing enemy lines, former soldiers working together to dig survivors from rubble, enemy nations sharing resources to help each other rebuild. They helped each other, the storm speaker observed, its energy field fluctuating with surprise. More than that, Songmi said, advancing to more recent footage. Within 50 years, they had become the closest of allies. Their former enemy became their most trusted partner. Today, their children grow up speaking both languages. Their scientists work together on joint projects, and their cultures have blended into something beautiful and new. She pulled up another case study, then another. Each time, the pattern was the same. Ancient enemies becoming trusted allies, bitter rivals transforming into collaborative partners. You see, Songmi explained, humans have a unique ability. We don't just end conflicts, we transform them into connections. We've learned that our former enemies often make our strongest friends because they understand our struggles better than anyone else. The Vorthak High Crystal Arc's crystal form began shifting through rapid color changes, the equivalent of intense thought. This is why you protected us during the attack, not from duty, but from friendship? Exactly, Songmi replied. When we saw both of your species in danger, we didn't see aliens who had insulted us. We saw potential friends who needed help. She brought up one final holographic display, a timeline of human space exploration. When we first ventured into space, we expected to find enemies. Instead, we found the galaxy's greatest gift, diversity. Every species we've met has taught us something new, made us stronger, helped us grow. The Nalari storm speaker crackled with curiosity. Even species that initially opposed you. Especially those, Song-Mi laughed. Some of our closest allies in the galaxy are species that once tried to conquer Earth. The Altarian Collective invaded our solar system 80 years ago. Today their ambassador is married to a human, and they're helping us build faster starships. She paused, letting the implications sink in. You see, what you call human weakness, our tendency to see potential friends instead of permanent enemies, is actually our greatest strength. It's how we've survived and thrived despite being one of the youngest species in the galaxy. The chamber fell silent, except for the quiet hum of life support systems. Both alien delegates sat motionless, processing everything they had learned about humanity. Finally, the High Crystallarch spoke, its light patterns showing deep respect. We have been mistaken about your species. The storm speaker's energy field pulsed with agreement. Your people possess wisdom that we have forgotten in our centuries of hatred. Song-Mi smiled warmly. It's not wisdom, really. It's just hope. We believe that any conflict can be transformed into cooperation, if both sides are willing to try. We've proven it works on Earth, and we'd like to help you prove it works here, too. The two alien delegates looked at each other for the first time since the peace talks began, not with hatred, but with something approaching curiosity. 6 months later, the ceremony hall aboard Harmony Station buzzed with activity unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Representatives from over 300 species had gathered to witness something unprecedented, the signing of the Kepler Peace Accord and the establishment of humanity's new role in galactic affairs. Ambassador Nam Jun stood at the podium, looking out at the incredible assembly. Crystalline beings from the Vorthak homeworld sat peacefully next to energy creatures from the Nalari systems. Species that had been enemies for millennia were now sharing the same space, all because of what had happened in this very station. 6 months ago we came here thinking we were mediating a simple territorial dispute, Namjoon began, his voice carrying through the chamber's universal translation system. What we discovered was something far more important, that peace isn't just the absence of war, it's the beginning of friendship. In the front row, High Crystallarch Vorth Mantis pulsed with gentle blue light patterns that humans had learned, meant deep contentment. Beside the crystal being, Storm Speaker Nalakthos flickered with warm golden energy. The two former enemies had become unlikely partners, working together to rebuild the territories their war had devastated. The peace treaty itself was a work of art. Written on quantum-stabilized crystal that could display information in both light patterns and electromagnetic frequencies, it represented the perfect fusion of both species' technologies. But more importantly, it included provisions that neither species had initially requested. We, the Vorthak and Nalari peoples, formally request that human advisors be permanently stationed in our territories, the High Crystallarch announced, its light patterns shifting to formal ceremony colors. Your species has shown us that differences can become strengths when approached with wisdom and compassion. The storm speaker crackled with agreement. We also request that the Galactic Council establish humanity as the official peacekeeping species for all inter-system conflicts. Your unique abilities make you invaluable to galactic harmony. From his seat in the diplomatic section, Commander Kim Tae smiled as he watched the ceremony. The past months had been incredible. Both alien species had not only signed the peace treaty, but had actively begun collaborative projects. Vorthak crystal technology was being combined with Nalari energy manipulation to create incredible new innovations. Their first joint project, a space station that could harness stellar energy and convert it directly into crystal-based computer systems, was already under construction. Dr. Park Jin and Dr. Song-Mi sat together, reviewing data tablets showing similar success stories across the galaxy. News of the Kepler Peace Accord had spread rapidly, and dozens of species in long-standing conflicts had requested human mediation. The demand was so high that Earth's diplomatic corps was scrambling to train enough people. The Zephyrian Empire and the Mechanical Collective have agreed to peace talks, Park Jin whispered to Song-Mi. They want us to mediate. That's a conflict that's been going on for 800 years. Song-Mi shook her head in amazement. The Galactic Council has officially classified our success rate at 93%. No other species has ever achieved anything close to that. The ceremony continued as various galactic dignitaries spoke about humanity's unique contribution to interstellar relations. The Altarian Collective, former invaders turned allies, praised human adaptability. The Silicon-based Geometric Federation complemented human creativity in finding solutions. Even the mysterious energy wraiths, who rarely communicated with physical beings, had sent representatives to acknowledge humanity's diplomatic gifts. But the real surprise came when Namjoon announced the establishment of the Human Diplomatic Academy right there on Harmony Station. This station will become the galaxy's premier training center for peaceful conflict resolution, he declared as holographic blueprints appeared throughout the chamber. Students from every species will learn alongside human instructors, creating a new generation of galactic peacekeepers. The Academy's design was breathtaking. Multiple environmental sections would accommodate different species' needs, while central learning areas used adaptive technology to allow beings of all types to study together. The curriculum would combine human diplomatic techniques with the wisdom traditions of hundreds of galactic civilizations. Security Chief Kang Du and Lieutenant Yun Ha watched from the security section as construction robots began assembling the first Academy modules outside the station's windows. The sight of former enemy species working together on the construction crews still amazed them. "Remember when they called us primitive?" Yun Ha whispered to her commander. Kang Do chuckled quietly. "Now they're begging us to teach their children how to make peace instead of war." The ceremony's climax came when the Galactic Council's supreme representative, an ancient being whose species had founded the interstellar government millennia ago, made an unprecedented announcement. "By unanimous vote of all member species, humanity is hereby granted special status as the galaxy's official diplomatic corps. Your species will have permanent seats on all conflict resolution committees and final authority in all peacekeeping operations." The chamber erupted in sounds of approval, crystalline chimes from the Vorthak, electromagnetic harmonies from the Nilari, and hundreds of other expressions of joy from species across the galaxy. As the formal ceremonies concluded, Namjoon looked out at the stars through the station's great viewing ports. Earth was just a tiny blue dot, somewhere in the distance, but its children had found their purpose among the stars. Humanity had discovered that their greatest strength wasn't in building bigger weapons or faster ships, but in building bridges between hearts and minds. The former enemies were now partners, working together on projects that would benefit entire star systems. The Academy was already receiving applications from young beings across the galaxy who wanted to learn the human arts of diplomacy and peacemaking. What had started as a reluctant assignment to mediate one small conflict had become humanity's greatest gift to the universe. In a galaxy full of warriors and conquerors, humans had chosen to be healers and builders of peace. As the celebration continued into the night cycle, ships from dozens of worlds arrived to join the festivities. The dark void of space was filled with vessels of every imaginable design, their lights creating a tapestry of unity that stretched from one horizon to the other. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as the species that helped others remember how to be friends. The end.